Hello everyone. In the last episode, we got to a point where we can draw routes to going to the passenger from the driver app. And in this episode, we're actually going to send the location of the driver when he has accepted the request for a ride. And you will see the driver's location inside the passenger app in real time. Let's first see how far we got in the last episode. So we go in the driver app and the passenger app on the right side here. So as a driver, we could say find passenger, and we can say as a passenger, look for our location. We look for the Facebook, and then we can say find driver, and the driver can see the route going to the passenger. So that's how far we got in the last episode. Now what we're going to build is that the driver can accept the passenger request, and then the passenger gets the location of the driver in real time as he is driving towards the passenger. So if we go and tap to accept the passenger request, we get thrown into navigation mode for the driver. So the driver gets a route navigation to the passenger, and the passenger also sees a little icon where the driver is currently at, and the icon is going to update in real time as we are getting a location of the driver. And here we have the backend running in Node.js with socket.io, which is receiving the driver's coordinates as he is driving along to the passenger, and these gets passed on to the passenger app. So that's what we're going to build in this episode, and I hope you will enjoy it and get something out of it. Now, unfortunately, I seem to have made some changes in the branch which haven't been in the video yet, which means I have made this bottom button in both the passenger and driver app into a component. I've made it inside the components folder. I put a bottom where you can pass in text and a function, and it has some styling so that it is underneath. It's the same as we made in the previous episode. However, I just made it into a component so it gets reused in both apps. However, this means that you need to switch on to this branch, so at least we have the same starting point. So please go ahead and do a git checkout and say showing request to driver, so we are on the same point. I also put in a little icon for the driver so he can see the passenger location. But other than that, it's pretty much the same app as we had in the last episode. So let's see just how we are, what kind of state we're at now. So I put a little emoji in here, and basically it's the same app besides that. And again, apologies for doing this. I don't know what went wrong exactly, but I'll be more careful in the future, making sure we're on the same point all the time. So basically in the driver app, we can say find passengers. For the passenger, we can say request. And the driver, as in the last episode, we see a route going to the passenger location. And he can say accept ride or not, but nothing is going to happen, or something is just broken. We can't accept the ride yet. That's what we're going to do in this episode. But please just do a git checkout. So git checkout. So I'm just trying to make it big so you can see it on the screen. So please do a git checkout 04 showing request to driver, so we are on the same point. So again, apologies for this, but please do this so we're on the same point. Thank you. Now, once you've done a git checkout with the branch name, then go inside and open up your emulators. I have an iPhone emulator here, iPhone 6, and an Android emulator. Go ahead and run the project inside that. And then run the backend as well. So go into the backend folder in the terminal and run node1 index.js. Now, the first thing I think we will do is maybe add a activity indicator for the passenger app. So once the passenger has requested a driver, they will see a little activity indicator, which is signifying that we're looking for a driver for the passenger right now. So just like we have inside of the driver app, we'll have the same thing inside the passenger app once you tap the request driver here. So let's go ahead, just do that real fast. Let's see how we can do that. So if we take a look inside of the driver app, we have this find passengers, and that actually has a activity indicator that is showing. So just for inspiration on how to do it for the passenger app, we can look at that. Inside the driver app here, inside of the screens, so driver, inside the screens folder, we have this finding passenger activity indicator that we create if the state means that we are looking for passengers. And then we get to use it down here in the bottom. So we pass it in as a child to the component. And the bottom is then showing also all of the children that it gets passed. So let's try and do that inside of the passenger app as well. So let's see, we want to make at least sure that we have a state of we are looking for a driver once we push this button here, this request button. So let's see where that button is. You have a get driver here, that is the bottom button here. And when we press that, we call the request driver function. So when we do this, we need to make sure we set a state of, set state, looking for driver, set it to true. Now let's see, do we already have a looking for driver? We do. We have this one, looking for driver. Are we using it anywhere? Well, we just created this one. But besides that, I think we are not using it. Let's see, looking for driver. No, we're only using it there. So we set it to true if we call this function. And then we want to show a activity indicator, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Sorry that I'm jumping a bit up and down. Let's make sure to import the activity indicator up from React Native. And then let's go down and find the bottom button. Actually, let's do it inside the render function here. We'll say, let finding driver act indicator to be null. But if this state looking for driver, then we're going to make a activity indicator. So finding, and we'll say it's going to be an activity indicator. And it will be size large. And we'll say animating depends on this state looking for driver. And now the reason that I'm not just passing in an activity indicator and just saying, okay, it's only showing if we have the state looking for driver, is because if we are not showing the animation of this activity indicator, it's just going to have this black padding. It's just going to be like a black space. There's not going to be showing the animation of the activity indicator, but it's going to be taking up space. So that's why I'm only creating it if there's this state. Now we're going to pass it into the bottom of the child. So remove the this, I don't know what you call it, diagonal line, whatever. And then I'll pass it in as a child to this bottom. Now let's see if it's going to work. That is always exciting. I don't know if it's going to work. Let's see. Hopefully. So we say passenger app, look for location. We'll say request. And we see a nice little activity indicator in the bottom. Isn't that lovely? Now the next step is that we want to make it so that when the driver has accepted the the passenger request, we want to say, hey, driver is on the way. And we want to show the driver location inside the passenger app. So let's see. So yeah, there we go. We see the passenger location. And now we want to fix this mess where the map gets weird. And we want to actually send the driver location to the passenger and say, hey, someone accepted your ride. So let's see. Now we need to add that the driver has accepted the passenger request. So let's see how this looks. So we go look for destination. And we say find passenger. So now we're waiting for a passenger request. And now it's showing the activity indicator still because the driver hasn't accepted the ride yet. But we want to make it so that when we press this one, found passenger, it's going to accept the ride. Now, right now, when we accept the ride, it's showing a activity indicator after we do it, and it's kind of messing up the map. Let's try and figure out why is it doing this. So let's go inside of the driver app again, say find passenger. If you tap this one again, it's going to send the request again. So that's a little workaround. Anyway, we say accept found passenger, accept ride. So what state are we in now? Let's try and find that text here. Found passenger, accept ride. Yeah, that's if the state is passenger found. But actually what's happening is, I think when we're pressing the button again, we go and we call the find passenger function again, which we're actually not supposed to. And that's why I think it's kind of messing up the app. So we need to make a accept passenger request instead. Request instead. And then we need to, well, basically pass on the driver's location and say, hey, we accepted this ride. So send driver location to passenger. So let's see. So we need to change this function here on the onPress function based on what state we're in. So if we are in a state of found passenger found, we're going to make the bottom function different. So let's define a bottom function as we define it as first as find passengers. And well, if we are looking for passengers or if we have found a passenger, we are going to change it to bottom function to be this accept passenger request. And now since I'm using the without the parameters like this, we need to do a binding up in the constructor of the method, this one, because we are using the this parameter or this object. basically every time you use this inside of a function, you either need to use a arrow function like we do here, or you need to do a binding in the constructor. That's just a basic React thing. So we can say this accept passenger request, this accept passenger request, bind with this. The same for the find passenger function. So we say define passengers dot bind with this. And now what we can do, we can say in the bottom here, we can say it's going to use the bottom function. And depending, again, just like we did before, depending on the state, we will change what is actually being called in the function. So now let's see first if it's actually going to mess up the map, because that's what I think it is doing when we're calling this function 2 times. Let's go in the driver here and say find passengers, say request. And if we click it, nothing happens. And well, that's because we're not doing anything in the function. So what we're going to do in the function now is to send a driver location to the passenger. And the passenger app will know once we're getting driver location, well, someone has accepted our ride, and we can start showing the location of this driver. So let's do that in the next section. So what I imagine we are going to do is we are going to be waiting inside of the passenger app. Once we request a driver, we're going to be waiting for an event with a driver location, some GPS coordinates for the driver. So once we get that, we say, okay, we got a driver. Let's show the driver on the passenger app. And inside of the driver, well, we need to send this driver location once we accept the request. Let's see how we do that, folks. So one thing I noticed here, we have this socket which is defined locally, but we need to define it inside the whole component instead. Let's see how we can do that. So we need to say this socket upside in the constructor already. We say this socket is equal to null. And once we do a component did mount, let's see if we can connect there. So we're going to do this a little different. I think we will just we will do a socket emit passenger request straight away, because we're going to do a connect inside of the component did mount instead, I think. Or we could also go, I think we can also go and say just like this. We can say this socket is equal to socket connect. So there we have the socket connection globally available inside of the component in other functions if you use this in front. So make sure all the places where you have a socket variable, just make it into this .socket instead. Yeah, I know I say socket a lot. Just don't think about it. So this .socket instead, because once we request the passenger, or we look for passengers in the find passengers, we already created a socket connection on this .socket. We'll say this .socket, and we say emit driver location, and we'll pass in this object containing a let's say a latitude. No, actually it's just pass in the, what do we have for the latitude and longitude? Well, we just have this latitude, longitude. Okay. Let's pass in an object. Where was I? I was here. Let's pass in an object with the state of latitude and longitude. just like that. Okay. And we will also, no, let's do it, keep it like this, people. And we also need to go inside of our backend, which is inside of the backend folder and index.js. And we need to do something when we get a driver location. Now, in this really simple example, before we start scaling it up for multiple drivers and passengers, we just have 2 sockets for taxi and passenger. So we're going to make a socket connection for the passenger here. Passenger socket, no. And when someone makes a someone makes a taxi request, because that's the passenger who does that, they want a taxi, right? We say, well, this is a passenger socket. This socket is a passenger socket. And now when we get someone wants a passenger, or rather we say when someone sends a driver location, and actually we also get some data on this, which is the driver location. We want to send that to the passenger socket. So we say passenger socket emit, just like we do inside when we get a taxi request. We say, well, emit to a we say emit taxi request, and to this taxi socket when someone wants a taxi. And that is how the taxi gets the route to the passenger. Now, when the the driver is accepting the passenger, we emit to the passenger socket the driver location, and we emit the driver location object, which has the latitude and longitude to him. And then inside of the passenger app, we're going to listen for this event on the request driver function. So when we have a driver location, we want to do 2 things. We want to stop having this spinning activity indicator here, and we want to change our state from, looking for driver to looking for driver is false. So let's try first just to see if we can remove this activity indicator by setting the state once we receive a driver location. So let's see if we can say this set state looking for driver is false, because now someone has accepted our request. And we also get the driver location object, which is containing the location of the driver. But we're going to do that in the next sections where we will display the driver location. Let's first just see if we can remove this indicator if we accept the ride from the passenger. That will be a big step. A small step for mankind, a big step for us people. Let's see how we are doing right now. So we have the driver. When we accept the passenger request, we emit a driver location with a latitude, longitude. Inside the backend, we are listening for this driver location event. And when we get that, we emit to the passenger socket that we created in the taxi request. We are emitting this driver location. And in the passenger app, we are listening again also for this driver location event. And if we get that, we set the looking for driver to false, and hence the activity indicator in the bottom should disappear. So people, let's see how it works. Now for once, I'm just going to search for something else, because I think I'm searching for Facebook all the time. Let's do Amazon. And let's say we request a driver, and the driver gets the route. That's what is happening inside this event, the taxi request event. And we'll say, okay, yeah. Okay, so we accepted the ride. And as you could see, the activity indicator here disappeared, which means that the passenger got the driver location and they got it. Now the next step, I think, is to show the driver location in the map for this passenger and adjust the map accordingly, maybe zoom out, so that we can see this icon of this poor driver who's all the way up in the northern side of up in San Francisco. But you know, times are tough. You just gotta take whatever passengers you can get in these tough times. Anyway, so let's get a icon up here showing the driver when the passenger is finally getting a driver accepting the ride. So now let's go and, well, first thing we need to do is to find an icon that we can use for this driving app. So let's see the passenger icon. So let's try and look for a car icon on Google Images. And let's see, we can use this one. Well, of course, you're free to use anything you want as an icon. You can use any size of icon as well. Let's just use this one for now. I will also be putting a link up for this icon if you want that. I'm just gonna get the zip file because this one is maybe not a good resolution, and I will extract that, and then I will take the one with the largest resolution, 512, and I will copy that into my folder, the image folder for the taxi app. So let's see, taxi app, we got it here. Inside the mobile folder, inside the images folder, I'm going to drag the picture here, and I will just rename it to car icon. And that should be it, folks. That's all you need to do. Also, since we added this image to our app, it's a new image, but you can see the added image inside the images folder in the mobile folder. You can see it right here. And now, since we added a new asset, an image asset, we need to restart our bundler, because that's just how it works in React Native, so that the native bundling sort of has the files inside. Anyway, I will just start up the project again. So I will run the React Native run Android, and then we'll run the iOS version as well. Actually, we should be able to just say reload JS, I think, and then it's going to reload it. But no, actually, I think I need to recompile it, because we need to have these files bundled in with the native binary that we're sending to the phone. Anyway, just stop the bundler, recompile everything, and send it back to your phone when you have added things like images files to your project. So now I'm just waiting for it to finish compiling here. Let's see. Now it's starting up the app in the emulator. It is done bundling. Let's see. Yeah, we can still press some buttons here. And now I'm going to start the iOS version as well. Run iOS simulator iPhone 6, because I think the Maps app is a bit faster on the iPhone 6 than the iPhone 10. That's why I'm using iPhone 6. Okay, so it's starting up the app now, and it's up and running. Also, one more thing we need to do is we need to have the backend running. So let's go into the backend folder. I will run nodemon index.js. There we go. So I'll just see. So let's see. So once we get that driver location inside of the passenger app, we'll say, well, looking for driver is false, but I think we also want to say that, well, a driver is on the way to be true, so that we know, okay, it is time for us to show the driver icon on this map. So we say driver is on the way. We set that to be false by default when you start up. And let's see. So driver is on the way. We set to true when we get a driver location. And let's also set the state of this driver location to be, well, the driver location. And remember, that is going to be an object containing a latitude and longitude. Now let's see people. We need to add a marker for the driver. So we say let driver marker be null. And if we have a driver on the way, we'll start to define this driver marker. So we'll say marker. And let's see, we also have some coordinates inside of this marker. And the coordinates is going to be the state driver location. And inside of this marker, we also need an image component, which is containing this car icon that we just imported here inside of and put it inside of the image folder. Let me see if we have the image component. We don't have that imported, so that's imported up from React Native. Image from React Native. And then let's use it down here. Let's see where we are. All right, that's here. No, there's a lot of things going on here. And it's in here. So let's put some parentheses around here. And then end the marker tag and put in a image element with a source, which is going to be our image. We'll say acquire and then pass in the path of this image. So we go back some folders, back one folder up and go into images and say car icon.png. Now let's see. We also need a style on this image, so it's not a huge icon we're having. So we say width of 40 and height of 40. Then we end the image tag. We put a ending parenthesis here, parenthesis, whatever you say. So we have a marker with the image inside. And then we can set the style with the width and height. Now that we need to use this driver marker as well. So we put it down inside of the map view component. Remember, all markers, polylines you want on the map, you have to put inside of the map view, so it's a child component. So here we say driver marker, pass it in. So if there's a driver, you will see the marker, or you should be seeing it at least, right? I can actually remove this one here because it's automatically going to assign driver location to this one inside of set state because it's the same name. That's just a little fancy trick you can use in ES6. Anyway, let's see how it looks, folks. So let's reload. Let's go into driver, say find passengers. And in passenger, let's go and find a location. Let's go to Amazon, find some books. And we say request. And then I'll say found passenger accept ride. Now, let's see. Actually, it didn't show any icon, but maybe there's an icon up here. See? So our driver is all the way up here. But we don't see it because we had the map zoomed in here. So we need to somehow be able to fit the map so that maybe we can see both our path, our route to the destination we want to go to, and we see the driver up here as well. And maybe also change the text down here. So we say driver is on the way, something like that. So let's go ahead and do that in the next section. So now we need to make this map fit where the icon of the driver also is showing. So just like in the when we get the route, we do a fit to coordinates function call where we pass in some coordinates array with a latitude, longitude, and the map is automatically going to fit itself onto this this route we have. Now, but we need to do the same thing, including the coordinate of the driver as well. So we just push this driver coordinate onto this coordinate array we have. So let's try and see how we could do that. So let's make a point coords array. We'll say this state point coords, and that's going to be the route coordinates here with the latitude, longitude objects. And then we'll say point coords push on the driver location, and the driver location just contains a latitude and longitude. So it's going to be just the same as the other objects we have inside this array. And then let's try and say this dot map fit to coordinates, and we pass in this point coords array, which has the extra driver location. So it's going to fit the map, including the driver location as well. Then let's put in some h padding, just the same we had before. I guess you could make some variable for it so you don't have to type it in again, but I'm just going to type it in again like this. So there we go. Now I'm expecting it to fit the map, including the driver icon as well. Let's see if it works, folks. So reload this one and go as a driver. We're looking for passengers. And then we'll say, find the location we want to go to. Request a driver. Now, that didn't really go as I expected to. Let's see what could be wrong here. What could be going? Oh, it doesn't even. Oh, no. We are still looking for a driver. And if I accept it, I attempted to assign read-only property. It's because I need to make this into a let instead of const. Now, sorry about that. So remember to use let instead of const, people. Of course, you already knew that. And you were thinking, what is Stefan doing while I was doing that? So let's find passengers. Let's say Facebook way, request. Now, I don't really understand why it is zooming back onto the passenger here when I say request. But let's see if I accept the ride here. Attempted to assign read-only property, it still says that. Okay, let's use some. I don't know why it's saying read only. I guess I just don't know my arrays in JavaScript, but we can use some destructuring, or, well, not destructuring, but the spread operator inside of ES6. So we say square bracket dot 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 with the array, and we add on the driver location at the end of it. Then we don't have to use push, and we can just use it like this. So let's see if I finally get this to work. Yeah. So we go driver, find passengers, get a destination, request, found passenger, accept right. Still not showing. Is it showing the icon? It is. That's a bit odd. So why isn't it showing the map like that? Why isn't it updating the map? All right, so I'm back here again, and I figure out what I was doing wrong here. Let me just show you the problem first of all. So we go in driver and passenger. So this is the thing I do here about point cards. That is correct. We are putting a correct location. That's why we can see the icon of the driver. I just deleted some console logs I had lying from debugging here. And so that is correct. This is actually doing its job correct. The problem is going on down here in the map view, where we set a region of the passenger's location. So let's see the problem here again. So I go search for a location, and let's say find passengers, and say request. And now notice how it went back to the passenger location when I pressed the request here. And it's like when it refreshed the state, all of a sudden it went back to this passenger location. Well, that is because, ladies and gentlemen, is because I'm using region here. So that is just going to set the region of the map anytime there's a refresh of the component. So when we change the state here, adding an activity indicator, it went back to the location here. Whereas before, when we are pressing the buttons, we're sort of forcing the map to be fitting the route inside. The fix is really simple. All we need to do is to set the initial region, which means when we're starting up, we will set the initial region to be the passenger location, and then it's not going to go back to the passenger location if we refresh the state or change the state. So let's try and see if it works. Of course, I know it works because I've just been trying to figure out what is wrong here. So we go driver, find passenger, and we'll say Facebook, or whatever place you want to go to. And we say request. And why did it do that? Didn't I'm pretty sure it's because I haven't saved the file. Dope. Okay. Back again. Let's go again. This time, people. This time, it's gonna work. Let's go request. Yeah, that's a good sign. It doesn't change the map to be onto the passenger location, and that is because we're using the initial region instead. Now, once we accept the ride, it is going to do the following: getting the point cards with the driver location and fitting the map to the coordinates. Ta-da! So here we have the driver up here. It's a little overshadowed by the text input. So maybe we could put some padding on here. Let's put twice as much, maybe. It will help a little. But yeah, now it's showing both the driver and where we are going to. The next section we are going to do so that when I press I accept right here, instead of just being stuck here, we are going to show navigation for the driver. So it's going to open Apple Maps and the driver can navigate to the passenger. And it's also going to update the location of the driver in the background as he is driving to the passenger. And the passenger can see that, of course. So now what we want to do is we want to open the navigation app inside of the driver app once we have accepted the ride to the passenger. So we open up Apple Maps, for example, on iOS, and you get the route directions or directions to the passenger. Now let's go inside of the driver screen. So make sure to select driver, and then we need to import the linking module and the platform module. So linking is for opening external apps and platform is for detecting what OS we're on. Because depending on if we are on iOS, we are going to open Apple Maps. If we are on Android, we are going to open Google Maps instead. So once we have accepted the passenger request in here, we are going to emit or open the navigation app inside of our phone. So if we are on the platform of iOS, we are going to open Apple Maps. So open URL and we'll say http maps apple.com/ with the address with the coordinates of the passenger. So let's see, we should be having the passenger destination somewhere. We have, let's see, we have point codes here, which should be containing the passenger coordinates, and the very last coordinate of this point codes array should be the final position of our passenger. So if we go and say, we will say const passenger location is equal to this state point codes, and we'll take the very last element of this array, which is going to be this state point codes length -1. So that's the very last item in the array, which is going to be, well, the passenger location. And now this passenger location contains a latitude and longitude. And then we pass in the latitude and longitude as this. We'll say passenger location dot latitude, and then we put a comma and say passenger location dot longitude. So that should be opening up the Apple Maps application with the directions to the passenger. And if we are on Android, we'll say linking open URL, and we'll say https://google.com/steer/API1 and destination. And here we put in the latitude and longitude as well. Passenger location, latitude, and a comma, passenger location dot longitude. So that will open up the Google Maps application inside of Android. Let's see if it opens up Apple Maps when we accept the passenger request. Oh, we go in driver, find passenger. And let's see. Make a request. And then when I say accept ride, which we do in here in this function, we should be opening up the Apple Maps application, and looks like it is opening up, and it shows to Google headquarters, which is where our passenger is located at right now. And then the driver can just press go, and he should be getting some nice navigation going to the passenger. Now, the next thing we need to do is to make it so that we are actually sending the driver location in real time to the passenger while we are driving towards the passenger. So that's what we're going to do in the next section. So I've been looking around and how to get the background location in React Native, and unfortunately we can't use the navigator object, the navigator, the geolocation. That's not going to be running if the React Native application is in the background. So we need to use some kind of other solution or third-party component package. And I found out, so there's this one from Transistor Soft, and that's paid, I think. The Android module requires purchasing a license. I think that's around $300 they want for that. Obviously, maybe there's more free version. I don't know. What's that? Okay, so they have, I don't know. So then maybe they have more features. I don't know. I'm sure they do, but it does cost some money, I think. And obviously we programmers are very poor, so we can't afford any money for software. And maybe I also just don't want my students to pay money for things to follow along in course. So I found another alternative, which is the Maroon 85 with the React Native background location, which is completely free. And yeah, so we are going to be using that to get the location or sending the location in the background. And it's pretty easy to install and start using it. So let's first, let's see how to install it. So we can go and say yarn add React Native Maroon background location. We'll go ahead and do that. Inside the mobile directory, say yarn add with the package name. Then they suggest that you use React Native link, and it also seems to work fine for me compared to React Native maps. This worked pretty good with linking. And now the dependency has been linked, and well, I think I might have to recompile it, but let's just YOLO it and see if it works. Let's see, people. I think I need to recompile it or like use React Native run again, but let's see if it works first. So they have pretty good documentation, I think, explaining all of the different options you have. They have long example here, quick example actually they call it. So let's import background geolocation from React Native Maroon background geolocation. I'm just going to copy it from their documentation. Just search for this one and you should be able to find the same GitHub page as I am on, because it's a pretty long name and I like to be able to copy paste these things in. Now let's go ahead and import the module up here. And let's look at what they do inside of configure. So inside of our component did mount function, we should, let's see. We should define some, we set up a configuration for this background geolocation. And let's do that down here. Now they have something where you can use HTTP post to send the location of the device. This is what the URL here is for. So if you have a HTTP, like a REST API running, you can post the location to the REST API. However, I prefer to just use Socket.io or WebSockets because, well, there's better performance using WebSockets. There's less overhead compared to sending HTTP post. And we need to use WebSockets anyway on the passenger side to send it or to update the passenger with new locations. So I just prefer to use WebSockets instead. And that's what the URL and HTTP headers is used for. That's for when they want to post coordinates. So since we're going to be using sockets or WebSockets, we are just going to delete this with the URL and post template HTTP headers. And let's see what else we need to change. So let's set debug to false because we don't want this notification to be shown when we are running it. And I also disabled the notification title, notification text. And yeah, that should be good to go. Another thing we need to make sure is that we have this authorization of getting the location tracking permission. Let's go ahead and add that in component did mount as well, this function here. We add that in here. So this just opens up a alert prompt. So make sure we have imported alert from React Native. Alert. And yeah, so if we don't have permissions, it's going to prompt and make sure the user has permissions. And that's all inside of the component did mount function. Now, what else do we need, people? So what we need now is to start, well, we need to run some kind of service or function when the background location has been started. We also put that inside of the component did mount. I think or maybe we put it in the accept passenger request. Maybe we do that. Yeah, we can do that. So here we say on start. Now we need to, so when we start sending background geolocation, we need to send to our Socket.io backend. And basically it's the same as what we're doing here. We just need to do it when this background geolocation is starting. Actually, I did a mistake here. Actually, we need to do it when we are on location. So that's every time we get a location inside the background geolocation. So sorry about that. So we go in here, background location on location. I will just change this one to be from start to location. And then we have the location object here. And now in here, we need to emit the driver location. So I'm going to cut that and paste it in here. And I will just copy the comment also. And then we need to paste in a location, latitude instead of from the state, latitude, and a longitude. Just like that. Now we need to also start this background geolocation. Now we define what we do when we receive a location. We send it to the passenger. We also need to define what we do when we start it. I mean, we need to say start, basically. So how do you start this background geolocation? Well, you can start it checking if it's running already. You can do that. Let's do that. So we copy the example they got here with the check status. I just copy that. And we pass it into the accept passenger request down here. So we say check status, and it has the state of is running, location off status, and so on. But we just want to check if it's running. I'm going to delete all these console logs. I don't need them. I don't want to look at it right now because I'm not debugging anything. And so we check if it is running, but if it's not, then we start up sending background geolocations. So people. And yeah. Now in our backend, we should already be emitting the driver location every time we get one. And let's see, every time we get a driver location, we should also be updating the map and the state of the driver location inside the passenger app. So all that's left now is to see if it actually works, even though I had to use React Native Link. And yeah. Let's see people. Let's also just do, for fun, a little console log. I will do that of the driver location so I can see if I'm constantly receiving new driver locations. We go ahead, people. Now is the time. Oh, that's not a good start. Undefined is not an object. So I am guessing that I need to rerun this because I seem to have imported it okay. We need to rerun this, people. Let's go ahead. I will close the bundler here. And I will just go into the mobile directory. And we will run React Native run Android and React Native run iOS again. So there was no way around it. I had to restart running it inside React Native, start the bundler again, and use React Native run iOS and run Android. Because we were using I just got a big error here. Let's see where this is. Because we were using some native components, so we had to restart it again. Now when I start up the app, it is saying that do you want to allow it to access your location even when you're not using the app? And we say allow, and I have this big error here on line 43. Let's see what that is about. So it must be this one with the get current position that is complaining about the permission missing. But if I reload this, it should be good to go, and it is receiving the permission fine. Now, if you don't want this big red box that I just got here, first of all, you would probably use just background geolocation to get your position anyway, instead of navigator geolocation. But you could remove this console log console.error, and that's just going to make sure you don't have this big red box instead. Now onto the seeing if we are getting the location first of all. So now when we accept a passenger request, we are using background geolocation to send this driver location instead. So thus it actually sent the location. That is what is interesting to see now. So find passengers, request, accept, right? And there we go. So now it is getting the driver location. It's a little bit up here and past the checkbox, the text box. Maybe we could put a little padding on it. Let's see if we can do that. In here, we can try and put, let's just say 140 on the top for the edge padding here. And yeah, so, but as you can see, this icon is not moving. And well, that's because we are not moving. We're just stationary. We're not moving at all. And in iOS, it's pretty easy to set a moving location inside of the device. You just go inside debug, location, and say freeway drive. And now you see it changed the position here. We're down here now, and it should be changing the position of this car. Let's see if we are driving now. Yeah, we are driving. So you see the icon is changing. It's actually going to zoom out to the driver location every time we get a update, because we do the fit to coordinates inside the passenger every time we get a driver location. You could make this into a one-time thing. I'm just going to leave it like it is, but all it means is that if the passenger has moved the map around and we get a new driver location, it's going to flip it back to the driver. So now we are getting updates on the driver location. You can see the icon is moving here while we still have the app in the background. So what I think is next on the menu or the roadmap for this app is we're going to make it so there's a defined route we make to the passenger, and then the passenger maybe gets some sort of notification that the driver has arrived or something like that. We'll figure out. Also, notice that I am using the iOS, where it's really easy to set a moving coordinate. If you want to do something like this inside of the Android, if you want to use the driver app on the Android app, you have to use something with the coordinates you pass in as a GPS data playback, which is a GPX or KML file. I will be showing you how to do this. I think it's going to be in the next video maybe. I will show you how to make this roadmap, which we're going to make so we have a defined route in GPS data going from the driver to the passenger, and then we're going to load that inside of the iOS simulator, and we can also load it inside the Android simulator. But what we have done now is we have enabled us to directly in real time update the location of the driver and show it on the passenger app while it's still in the background, I must say. So thank you for watching the video. I hope you got a lot of things out from it, and I'll see you next time.